Well, what's also antithetical to who we are is basically censoring cartoonists, political commentators, people who want to speak truth to power through the creativity and the work that they do. So let's talk a little bit about what's going down at the Washington Post. A Washington Post cartoonist has officially resigned from her post after the depiction of tech titans, including Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos, debasing themselves in front of Donald Trump was rejected. So she submits her cartoon for the Washington Post. It gets rejected. And she feels that this is very much in line with the changes that have been very apparent at the Washington Post after it became clear that Donald Trump was going to win the presidential election. So the cartoonist, Anne Telenays, had worked for the Post since 2008. She was a longtime employee there. And here's the sketch that she had submitted before Christmas. So for those of you who are listening to the audio version of it, you see the tech titans, including Jeff Bezos, holding bags of money while kneeling before Donald Trump. And so, the cartoon shows both Mark Zuckerberg, Sam Altman, Patrick Soon-Shiong, who is the owner of the Los Angeles Times, Disney, and Jeff Bezos bowing before Donald Trump and offering him money. But it was never published. And part of the reason why it was never published is because it was rejected. So in a Substack post titled, "Why I'm Quitting the Washington Post," here's how she describes the image. The cartoon that was killed criticizes the billionaire tech and media chief executives who have been doing their best to curry favor with incoming President-elect Trump. There have been multiple articles recently about these men with lucrative government contracts and an interest in eliminating regulations making their way to Mar-a-Lago. And as we know, Jeff Bezos is in fact the owner of the Washington Post. And he started making news in this context when he rejected or blocked the editorial board's planned endorsement of Kamala Harris, and then after that went to Mar-a-Lago and had dinner with Donald Trump. So the Post immediately, by the way, was punished for that because they lost 250,000 subscribers, about 10% of their subscriber base, after Bezos decided to block that op-ed or that endorsement of Kamala Harris by the editorial board. Now, the cartoonist suspects that Bezos's apparent editorial control is the reason why her cartoon was nixed. She told NPR, quote, "I'm very used to being edited. I've never ever, since I've worked for the Post in 2008, been not allowed to comment on certain topics by having cartoons being killed." But the Post is actually disputing that characterization of what happened. Editorial page editor David Shipley says, nah, it's actually about repetition. "Not every editorial judgment is a reflection of a malign force. My decision was guided by the fact that we had just published a column on the same topic as the cartoon and had already scheduled another column, this one a satire, for publication. The only bias was against repetition." But she's not buying it. I'll give you her comment in just a minute, but I'm dying to hear what you think, Jake.
Yeah, so it's really tough to tell. I've been on both sides of that. And sometimes folks make assumptions about why you made a decision that aren't even close to true. But other times I've seen employers make up total BS excuses. So, they did publish those things that seem to be going in the same direction as that cartoon. So I don't want people getting the wrong idea the Washington Post isn't publishing anything that's criticizing people like Bezos going in and kissing up to Trump. But at the same time, it feels like the way that they could have easily resolved this is, if you're worried about overcrowding about the same topic on the same day, wouldn't you have just told her, hey, we're not gonna run this today, but we'll run it 3 days from now, right? When we don't have any other content like that. And it'll still be relevant 3 days from now. So the fact that they couldn't find any way to run it leads me to believe that the cartoonist is right. And so, look, the point of political cartoons is to poke fun at the powerful and to be a voice for the people in a way that's kind of we've grown to accept, and the people in power have grown to accept. And so if you start taking that away, well, I guess cartoons die in the darkness. So
yeah. You're exactly right. I agree with everything that you've said. Look, the Washington Post has been publishing critical pieces on Jeff Bezos. Had that not been the case, then I would come out like swinging on this story. With that said, though, I think they should have published the cartoon. I think it's an excellent cartoon. It is poking fun at powerful tech titans who want to curry favor with whoever's in charge, right? They'll suck up to Biden when he's in charge. They'll suck up to Trump when he's in charge because they want to have influence on the power players in this country. And so I don't think there was anything wrong with that cartoon. In fact, I like that cartoon quite a bit. And it would have been far better if they just ran it. Who cares if there's a little bit of repetition, right? I mean, there are people who specifically look for the cartoons. There are people who are specifically looking for the print journalism in the Washington Post. An article is different from a cartoon. Just publish the cartoon and call it a day. But they didn't want to do that. And she made a decision to resign. And now she's over at Substack. And look, this has been playing out in news organizations across the country where people want a little more autonomy in the kind of news that they get to report on and the type of content they put out into the world. I don't know if this is going to be a good model where everyone just becomes independent. I do think that there's a place for these legacy media outlets. I've been very critical of them because I think that they haven't done a great job in certain areas of covering the news. But make no mistake about it, these are the individuals or these are the platforms that tend to have the resources to do journalism on the field. And we desperately need that. People like us would not be able to do our jobs if it weren't for the journalists out there collecting, gathering, and reporting on the news. So it kind of breaks my heart to see that Washington Post as a whole is being punished for some of the bad decisions that management is making. So if you have a subscription to the Washington Post, just keep in mind that there are really good reporters there that unfortunately tend to have bad management in some cases. And yeah, in some cases, there are also, kind of crappy journalists as well. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.